Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Got a great show for you guys today on this Tuesday afternoon. Big show, full show today. We're going to talk about Jamal Khashoggi and what's going on with that. That's a Washington Post journalist that was killed over in Saudi Arabia. Oh boy, that is some interesting stuff there, including... Did we just witness a cover-up? Fascinating. We'll talk about that. Then, of course, we've got Saudi Arabia giving the Trump administration money, or at least the Trump campaign money, people related to Trump. And then, of course, we got a breakdown of how much Saudi Arabia has been giving lobbying firms to lobby the United States. A bit of an issue. We also have Lindsey Graham. This is, boy... Not like, is there a war Lindsey Graham has not called for already? And I know he's talking about Saudi Arabia, but he's already talking about regime change. Oh, Mohammed bin Salman, gotta go. He's gotta go. He's toxic. Oh boy. I always get a little worried when Lindsey Graham starts talking about how specific leaders need to go. Then, of course, we've got a poll on Republicans. Surprise, surprise. What issues do they find most important? None of the issues that are actually affecting people who, like regular people, the majority of Americans. So we'll talk about that. We also have beer. Your beer is going away due to climate change. Tucker Carlson, Beto O'Rourke, we've got, and then we've got net neutrality. That's also really important. So we got a lot of stuff to cover today to talk about. So hopefully you can get to it all. All right. Now, before I get into the rest of the stories, please give us a like and a share. Also, big announcement. We have hit 90,000 subscribers finally on the YouTube main channel. That's TYT Nation. Fantastic. So 90,000, we're about 10,000 away from hitting 100,000 subscribers. That's amazing. So let's keep going. Let's keep pushing. 10,000. Let's do it. We're also working, 100,000 total. 10,000. We are working on our Facebook page, facebook.com/TYTNation. If you haven't already, please like. We also do live streams over there. Actually, we're streaming live on Facebook right now with a total of 0 people who are watching. So I have kind of left my Facebook page alone too long. So, yeah. Anyway, we're working on getting some more likes there as well. So if you haven't already, please like our page. Anyway, one more thing. Patreon.com/TYTNation. We are getting hit, of course, just like everybody else. We've been hit with demonetization, deranking. Our videos don't show up in suggested feeds, so we're getting buried by corporate media, CNN, people getting unsubscribed from the channel, not getting notifications, etc. Please help us out by becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That helps us, basically pay the bills. So if you could do that, sign up to be a patron. $3, $5, whatever you can afford. That means a world to the show and to me. So all right, anyway, let's move on. Let's get into the stories. I think my transitions are messed up too. I have to fix that. All right. So we may be witnessing a cover-up when it comes to the death of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi over in Saudi Arabia. At apparently about the same time, according to Common Dreams, that Saudi King Salman insisted that to Donald Trump in a phone call that, oh no, we didn't have anything to do with the death or disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi. No, we didn't do anything about that. We didn't kill him. And then later on, they came out later and said, we might have accidentally killed him. But I'll get to that in a minute. Apparently, not long after that phone call where he issued a strong denial, I very strongly deny that we had anything to do with the death of Khashoggi. And that was enough to convince Donald Trump, by the way, President Trump, he issued a strong denial. Yeah, well, of course. I mean, of course he didn't do it. It was very strong. It was very forceful. Video cameras apparently caught a team of cleaners hauling several buckets of mops, 2 large cases of trash bags, Dixie cleaning solution, another carton of what appears to be bleach, and 2 cases of pinar milk through the front door of Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul. Wait. So this is right before Turkish investigators were going to enter the consulate. Now, they were going to do an inspection. And so this inspection, of course, would find additional evidence of who might have been behind the disappearance of Khashoggi. Right? And by the way, the reason that Saudi Arabia is heavily implicated is because Khashoggi was a journalist, for one, who was very critical of the Saudi regime, of the Saudi royal family specifically. The royal family being Mohammed bin Salman and King Salman. So you can understand. Now, the fact that the strange thing that was noted here by all the journalists is that they just did it in plain view. Oh, here comes the cleaning crew. Right in front of us, we just sat there videotaping them as they went by. In fact, independent reporter Bazu Dragahai joked in a tweet that, quote, the way to preserve the integrity of a possible crime scene and bolster confidence in the investigation is to bring in a bunch of cleaners to the front door before detectives arrived. And Al Jazeera reporter Jaman El-Shayal tweeted, you couldn't make this up. Literally minutes after Saudi authorities said Turkish investigators could enter consulate, a cleaning team arrived and entered the building. And of course, shortly after the cleaning crew arrived, here you had a team of investigators arriving in an unmarked police car to begin that inspection. Now, look, the Khashoggi case is really interesting because, again, here you have the strong denial from King Salman and Mohammed bin Salman. Oh, no, we didn't have anything to do with that. Khashoggi, never heard of him. What are you talking about? Oh, he disappeared? I didn't know. But, you know, hey, look, if something happened to him, we didn't order it. And Donald Trump subsequently saying, well, it must have been some rogue killers. I mean, because, again, he strongly denied it, right? Now, here's the thing. Turkey says, wait a minute. No, we have video and audio evidence that not only was Jamal Khashoggi murdered, but he was also tortured by a team of Saudis. So, I mean, look, I think it's fairly obvious what happened. I believe it's a cover-up. And I know, like, okay, is it conspiracy? Am I just guessing? Based on what I know, yes, I'm definitely guessing. Right. But, okay. So now, let's skip past Trump's reaction. So I already talked about that. So let's go to the Saudis, right? So now, they originally denied any involvement, as I mentioned before, and then we're like, oh, he might have been killed accidentally during an interrogation. How do you accidentally murder someone doing an interrogation, right? How does that happen? I mean, what? You got a Saudi guy sitting there saying, you know what? I think we might have hit him too many times with that rusty pipe. Maybe we should have, hit him a few less times. How does that happen? How does that happen? No, you killed him. You murdered him. A journalist because he was critical of the Saudi crown. And look, this shouldn't be surprising to anybody. I know there are people out there like, oh my God, I can't believe Saudi Arabia would do something like this. This is the country that regularly beheads people for witchcraft and apostasy. They still cut off people's hands for stealing. Are you at all surprised that they would allegedly kill a journalist who is critical of the crown? No, it shouldn't surprise you at all. It shouldn't surprise anyone. And here's another piece coming from Turkey. Now, according to Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, right? So I've got problems with Erdogan. I think they're becoming way too fundamentalist. That's a completely different issue, right? According to Erdogan, Turkish investigators who searched over the Saudi consulate found surfaces there that were freshly painted over. Wait. Freshly painted over. What? Why would you have to paint over a place after bringing in a cleaning crew? Why would you have to do that? Oh, right. It's because they did it. Previous news reports have cited anonymous Turkish officials suggesting that a hit team of 15 Saudis killed, and not only killed him, but apparently dismembered him inside the consulate. So, allegedly tortured, then murdered, then dismembered, and the remains hidden. What the hell is going on here? And of course, here we have our president, as I said before, our president saying, "Oh no, you know what? I believe the Saudi Arabia when they say, well, they didn't do it." This is look, what they did. You can't go around killing journalists, for one. You can't. Now, what we do to Saudi Arabia, well, that's a different question, obviously. And it's a difficult question. Actually, to me, it's not difficult. Stop selling them weapons. Stop selling them weapons and do international sanctions. Now, is that going to happen with Donald Trump, who has multiple investments in that area, in Saudi Arabia himself, and who has previously said, "Oh, I love the Saudis. They come and they rent my apartments. They buy my condos. Sure, they come in and buy my property. I get money from them, and they pay outrageous prices." Who wouldn't love Saudi Arabia? And as we find out later, the people around Trump in the Trump campaign have also received money from Saudi Arabia. So, are we going to do anything about it? No. Will there be any sort of punishments? Of course not. But there has to be some sort of justice for this obviously murdered reporter, because again, you can't go around killing journalists and get away with it. So, okay, moving on. Recently, Saudi Arabia has been implicated in the murder of a journalist for the Washington Post, Jamal Khashoggi. Now, that and the investigation around that murder is making people take a second look at how much influence Saudi Arabia has in U.S. politics. Now, why does that, I mean, how are the two things related? Well, I can point to the response from President Trump when in the administration as it pertains to Saudi Arabia. So right now, Mohammed bin Salman has strongly denied that his government had anything to do with it, before backtracking and saying, we might have accidentally killed him during an interrogation. Oops, but we didn't order it, though. I didn't order it, at least. The royal family didn't order it. They must have done it on their own. Now, Trump says, oh yeah, I believe him. It was a strong, strong denial. Now, you could say, and I think this is mostly the case, to be clear, Donald Trump just believes dictators because, well, they make a strong case. And all Donald Trump cares about is, are you strong? Well, if you strongly deny something to him, that means, oh, well, yeah, I strongly deny things all the time that aren't necessarily true, so I'm going to believe you anyway. Because that's what I do. You and I are a lot alike in that regard. But another part could be the money. So Donald Trump himself has a lot of investments in Saudi Arabia, and has gotten a lot of money from Saudi princes, people who are very, very wealthy. And so have people around his campaign. Now, apparently, according to the Center for Responsive Politics, the Saudi kingdom has actually spent more than $19 million with Washington lobbying groups from the beginning of 2017 until now. So there is very much a lot of money coming from Saudi Arabia into these lobbying firms to basically make Saudi Arabia look good to our government. Now, topping that list is Sonoran Policy Group, a lobbying firm headed by Robert Strick. Now, Robert Strick is an Oregon winery owner and a West Coast advisor to the Trump campaign. Now, they were paid about $5.4 million by the Saudi government. So now, to be fair, this instance is not a payout from Mohammed bin Salman, right, to the Trump government. Now, Mohammed bin Salman is somebody that President Trump has been cozying up with. In fact, you know, that's the image where he's got his hand on the orb, right? So he's been cozying up with that guy, but had previously received money from someone else in the Saudi government. Now, in May of 2017, the group signed a contract with Saudi Interior Ministry to be paid $450,000 a month to provide broad advisory services, including public relations and congressional executive branch brand management, according to a copy of the agreement filed with the U.S. government. So now look, American companies take on foreign lobbying clients. They do so all the time. And look, Paul Manafort, that's actually what he got in trouble for, is lobbying on behalf of a foreign government, but not actually telling the federal government. Now, this group did follow the rules. That's how we know they were lobbying on behalf of Saudi Arabia, or at least a particular Saudi prince, Arabia, the interior minister. This is Mohammed bin Nayef, right? And according to a report from the New York Times, he enjoyed deep ties to the American intelligence apparatus under President Barack Obama and had never needed the lobbyist before. However, that changed under Trump, and he needed some help, so he ended up hiring that firm, Sonoran Policy Group, to lobby on behalf of him to the Trump government. Now, this spring, Trump invited Nayef's chief rival, Mohammed bin Salman, to a formal White House lunch. That, of course, worried Nayef, and he said, okay, let's hire this lobbying firm because I want to get on Trump's good side. So then Sonoran apparently landed its first government account in the weeks after Trump's surprise presidential win, when founder Robert Strick ran into a New Zealand official in the U.S. who was bemoaning the fact that the prime minister didn't know how to contact Trump. A clutch of Trump-connected folks, including Stuart Jolly, the campaign's national field director, and Robin Townley, former aide to one-time Trump Nation security advisor Mike Flynn, quickly signed on. Since then, Sonoran's foreign clients have included the governments of Afghanistan, the Czech Republic, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, the Saudis were the biggest catch. Sonoran's July 2017 filing lists all contributions, money or income, from foreign sources for the last 6 months. SBG was paid upfront for an entire year by the Saudi ministry for a total of $5.4 million. Now, Nayef, of course, is, he was passed over as crown prince, right? So now you have Mohammed bin Salman. So that money that went to this group, Sonoran, didn't actually get utilized. They still got paid, but they never did lobby to the Trump government on behalf of Saudi Arabia. So they just took the money and ran. That's awesome. That is both hilarious and insane. Now, an August amendment to the May filing noted that the only activity undertaken on behalf of the ministry was the initial planning phase of a summit to combat violent extremism that was potentially going to be held at George Washington University. That event was canceled thanks to regime change in Saudi Arabia, according to the filing. So that so-called regime change was basically when Mohammed bin Nayef was passed over for crown prince. And it became Mohammed bin Salman, who, of course, has a nice, cozy relationship with Donald Trump. Sonoran kept the cash, but had no power. The client had no power. SBG was excited about working with the Saudi Interior Ministry to help combat violent extremism. And, of course, this is just all like, no, this is bullshit. They weren't actually going out there to combat violent extremism. You're kidding, right? No, this is a way to ingratiate Nayef with the Trump government in case he became crown prince, which he did not, but they still ended up keeping the money. Now, the firm said in a statement at the time to Politico, due to internal circumstances in the kingdom, our contract was truncated, and SBG was unable to implement our unique strategy services. We look forward to again working with our vital ally, Saudi Arabia, and bringing our global reach to the fold as we do for all of our clients. SVG didn't respond to questions about the $5.4 million deal, but nonetheless, Washington lobbyists did note that, boy, that is a lot of money for any government to give a lobbying firm. And that's why it really stood out. Like, that's a lot of cash. Now, I want to show you this because it's not just an issue with the Trump administration. Like, I wanted to bring this story up because it actually illustrates how foreign governments use Washington lobbying firms to basically funnel money for influence. And let me show you some of the biggest companies that do that. Now, this is 2017 to 2018, right? So this is just last year. And you can see already the amounts of money are pretty staggering. Here you have the Sonoran Policy Group, of course, getting $5.4 million. You have Aramco Affiliated Services, $5 million. And then, of course, you've got the Podesta Group, headed by Tony Podesta, brother of John Podesta, getting $4.5 million to lobby on behalf of Saudi Arabia. So if you guys ever really wonder why Saudi Arabia, why we care so much about what they do. For one, it's because they give people a lot of money. They lobby our politicians, which they shouldn't be able to do. Like, foreign lobbyists should be banned. We should ban all lobbyists, and we should ban all lobbying money, get all the money out of politics. But again, the reason that I show you this is to show you how much influence they have. And one of the reasons why we are Saudi Arabia's top ally, despite the fact that they murder journalists, allegedly, and that, you know, they punish people for ridiculous things, apostasy, witchcraft, they cut off people's heads. And you know, the Trump administration is the same people that were saying, you know, the ISIS, they cut off people's heads. Well, so does Saudi Arabia. What makes them different? Well, it's because we can do oil deals with Saudi Arabia. We get a lot of oil. We get the petrodollar, right? They supply us with cheap oil. And it doesn't matter that they are bombing the crap out of Yemen and that millions of Yemenis are now, you know, at the risk of starvation or are actually starving right now. There are cholera outbreaks. There are, you know, disease and death running rampant. We're still their ally. And if you want to know why, oh, just follow the money, because it'll lead you exactly to the reason. All right. One more for Saudi Arabia here. always get a little concerned when I start to hear the kind of rhetoric that we're hearing from some of our politicians, even when it comes to places like Saudi Arabia. Now, one great example of this is Lindsey Graham. Now, Lindsey Graham, ever since John McCain passed away, he's been on a bit of a tear. First, of course, making an ass of himself during the Kavanaugh hearings by throwing a rage. And now he is raging at Mohammed bin Salman, that is a crown prince of Saudi Arabia. Now, during an interview on Fox and Friends, he was talking about how Mohammed bin Salman, he's got to go. Let's take a look.
In Saudi Arabia without MBS knowing it.
Who's MBS?
He's the 33-year-old crown prince who jumped over other people. He's the son of the existing king, and I think he's on a bad track. I can never do business with Saudi Arabia again until we get this behind us.
Right. And what does that mean?
That means I'm not going back to Saudi Arabia as long as this guy's in charge.
So you're saying the crown prince has to leave?
It's up to them, but I'm not going back. I've been their biggest defender on the floor of the United States Senate. This guy is a wrecking ball. He had this guy murdered in a consulate in Turkey, and to expect me to ignore it, I feel used and abused. I was on the floor every time defending Saudi Arabia because there's a good ally. There's a difference between a country and an individual. The MBS figure is, to me, toxic. He can never be a world leader on the world stage.
So what does the president do? Sanctions?
It's up to the president. But what I would do, I know what I'm going to do. We're going to sanction the hell out of Saudi Arabia. You know, we deal with bad people all the time, but this is in our face. I feel personally offended. They have nothing but contempt for us. Why would you put a guy like me and the president in this box after all the president has done? This guy's got to go. Saudi Arabia, if you're listening, there are a lot of good people you can choose, but MBS has tainted your country and tainted himself.
All right, so look, there's a lot in there that it kind of needs to be picked apart. For one, okay, oh, he's got to go. Now, look, if you're talking about the thing that I think you're talking about, oh no. So when I hear the words, oh, that leader's got to go, and from somebody like Lindsey Graham, I automatically think regime change. That is my Pavlovian reaction, right? Like, oh God, he's going to take it. He wants to take us to another war. Has Lindsey Graham ever met a war he didn't like? No. No, he's never met a war he never liked because he loves war. He is a warmonger. And look, if given the chance, he'll be a war criminal. So definitely. Nonetheless, this is what you draw the line at. You don't draw the line at, and again, he says, I've defended Saudi Arabia so many times in the Senate. You've defended their terrible human rights record, for one. The fact that they, still cut people's heads off for punishment, cut people's hands off for punishment. They have religious police, literal Sharia law in this country. They've supported terrorists. Right now, they're using our weapons, our bombs, to destroy Yemen, to kill millions of innocent people. But Jamal Khashoggi, that's where you draw the line. Now, this is a terrible line, right? It's a terrible thing. This is a Washington Post journalist that was basically tortured, murdered, and dismembered, and then there was a cover-up. That's pretty horrible. But that doesn't mean that the shit beforehand wasn't also horrible. In fact, it is on orders of magnitude even worse than the death of a journalist. So let's be straight on that, okay? Like, that's the truth here. But this is where he draws the line. No, this is more, I think, tough talk from Lindsey Graham, who, again, without his friend John McCain, has just continued to spiral out of control and to show who he really is. And who he is, not a good person. Despite the fact that, look, I do agree that maybe we should, that we should put sanctions. I think the number one thing that we need to do is to stop basically selling Saudi Arabia weapons. Why are we selling them weapons? So that they can bomb more innocent people. No, we need to not do that. And yes, we probably should put sanctions. Not just because of this, but because of all the other terrible stuff that they are doing at this moment. There is no reason we should be allies with Saudi Arabia. And now I'm not saying that we should be enemies and that we should, start a war with them. There's no reason that we should be friends with them either. And so, look, if Lindsey Graham were actually principled, I know, laugh along with me, then he would agree with that sentiment based on all the other things that I've mentioned before. Their grotesque human rights record, and their war with Yemen, which is a massacre. But we know where Lindsey Graham stands. All he cares about is how to enrich his donors, and his donors include oil and gas, and of course defense contractors. So, as usual, follow the money, and you'll find out exactly why these politicians are saying these particular things. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We're going to change the subject here, and we'll do it with a poll. So we'll come right back. Stay right here around the nation. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf with you. Got a super chat to read here. A question, actually, from Shane McAndrew. He asked, did you see Mr. Weeks slut-shaming Monica Lewinsky on Twitter? Because he says that he'll never stop defending Hillary. He and other HRC supporters, feminism was just a black screen to worship their queen. So, Mr. Weeks. Ah, yes. So, here's the thing. I did not see that tweet, but I do know exactly who you're referring to, and basically what their MO is. I try to disassociate myself with social media during the weekends for the sake of my sanity, and not pay attention to donut Twitter. But, man, that Mr. Weeks, if you want bad takes, like if you want the hottest of the hot shit takes, you go to donut Twitter, you go to Mr. Weeks. And not just him, but you got that Ragnarok Lobster guy. There's a whole cast of zany HRC, still with her, supporters that just say the most insane things. So, yes, slut-shaming Monica Lewinsky, definitely something that they would do. So it surprises me not at all to hear that. But thanks for the super chat. I appreciate that. And boy, yeah, the insanity. Insanity from Donut Twitter never ceases to surprise me. All right. And apparently a lot of you are hungry on our stream because you're talking about bread. I took the time to read some comments. Bread. It's a good thing I ate before the show, man. Actually, maybe it's not a good thing that I ate before the show. I've got heartburn. Anyway, what is Donut Twitter? Donut Twitter, basically it's what we call the small percentage of Twitter that are still with her that literally put donuts in their names. Because, I don't know, it's got something to do with somebody bringing in donuts or something to a Hillary campaign office or something like that. And so, yeah, there's Rose Twitter, which is the socialists, right? And then there's Donut Twitter, which is the still I'm with her people. So it's crazy, and you should probably just be glad that you're not on Twitter and don't know what this is about. Okay, anyway, enough wasting time on that. Let's move on. We got a poll here. We'll have some fun with this one. So as the midterm fast approaches, different polling organizations are trying to figure out what kind of issues motivate each side. So, what are the issues that Democrats care about? What are the issues that Republicans care about? And what are the politicians actually doing to address those issues to bring out people to the polls? Well, there's a study by Pew Research Center, which looked at different issues that, again, are facing the country, and they ranked how much people actually care about those issues. Well, it's not a big surprise to show that, well, the worldviews between the left and the right are enormous. For example, climate change. Now, recently there was a big study that says that we have about 12 years left before climate change is basically devastating, okay? We have 12 years to head off the most devastating effects of climate change by the year 2100. And even before that. How many Republicans actually care about climate change? How many see it as a very big problem? Apparently, just 11% of Republicans see global warming, climate change, as a very big problem. Now, contrast that with Democrats. 72% of Democratic voters see this as a very big problem. And I would say the possible extinction of our species is a very big problem. So I would agree with that. But Republicans are like, eh. Now, I go back to seeing this meme about Jim Inhofe, who's like, I don't really care about it. You know why? Because science and climate change, whatever, well, God can just undo it. God. So we don't have to care about it at all because God apparently will do something about climate change. First off, if there is a God, right, that can magically snap their fingers and do whatever, then okay, why would such a God, and this is going back to the Bible. I know I'm going to get a little off track and a little esoteric here, but just think about it for a second. Have a little thought experiment here. So in the Bible it says God gave us the earth, right, to be good stewards. We respond by trashing the shit out of it and dumping coal ash into rivers. Before the EPA, there were rivers that were so polluted that you could light them on fire. So do you think God would be like, oh, don't worry about it, dog. I'll just clean that up right now. Well, if that's true, then why did we need the EPA to do it? And why did we need these organizations to do it? They make no sense when they make that argument. When people like Inhofe say, oh, no, don't worry about it. God will fix it. No. No. If there is a God, God's saying, look, you screwed it up. You live with it. Ridiculous, right? But nonetheless, that's the Republican Party. They're saying, nope, don't care. We don't care about this. This is not a big problem. Not a big problem at all. Now, there's more, right? The topic of sexism. Now, that's come up quite a bit, and it's actually been a big topic since at least 2016. It should have been a big topic a long time. But it really started coming up during the 2016 election because Hillary Clinton, of course, was running, and sexism was a big topic. Now, more recently, the big example here is Judge Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford. Now, Christine Blasey Ford, of course, accused Kavanaugh of rape and you know, all that. The response from Republicans and Kavanaugh himself was deeply sexist. Oh, you should have kept your legs closed. Oh, you didn't remember. You know, I believe that it happened to you, but I think you were misremembering. She's like, no, I didn't stutter. 100% Brett Kavanaugh. And again, the response from Republicans, from Donald Trump himself, was to mock her. Oh, I don't remember this. I don't remember that. You guys saw the video. Well, that lines up with the results from Republicans. About 12% of Republicans say that sexism is a major problem plaguing the United States, versus about half of Democrats. Okay. Now, not only that, racism. Now, racism, only 19% of Republicans, that's actually a larger number, that's probably the largest number here, 19% of Republicans say that racism is a very big problem in the United States compared to about 63% of Democrats. On gun control. Now, look, we have a mass shooting nearly every day here in America, right? Now, Republicans, only about a quarter of them, then that's actually the biggest number, said that gun violence is a major problem in the United States compared to about 80% of Democrats. As of October 15th, there have been 45,496 reported gun incidents in 2018 and 286 mass shootings in the United States. One nearly every single day. So, those are issues that Republicans don't think, a majority don't think, are actual big issues. Racism, sexism, climate change, that's not an issue. Don't care about that. And mass shootings, definitely don't care. Don't care. In general, Republicans didn't think there were as many big problems in the United States as their Democratic counterparts. Now, of course, that could probably, part of that is explained like, well, what are you talking about? Trump's making America great again. He's making America so excellent. Oh, really? How's that? Well, unemployment's down. Continuing a trend from the Obama administration. But wages are also stagnant. Don't mention that. Oh, the stock market's up. Yeah, this means rich people making money, not the rest of us. Oh, but there's this and there's that. And a lot of the stuff they point out are just plainly untrue. So, but again, part of this is, oh, there's no major problems. When basically the economy is almost the same as what it was under Obama, except that now rich people have even more money. The income divide is even higher than it was during the Obama years. That, again, I criticized him for not doing enough to be able to solve. And to be fair, it's not like the Republicans didn't block him on every single attempt to do so. I mean, basically, what Obama did was propose small Band-Aid solutions. Oh, let's raise the minimum wage to $12 an hour. The Republicans would block him on that. So, look, it's not like President Obama wasn't trying to do anything, but as usual from corporate centrist Democrats, what their solutions are never really enough to solve the real problem. And of course, they do so, these half measures, because, well, we can't be radical. And more importantly, we've got to reach out to our Republican colleagues who, in this case, blocked and swatted down every single piece of legislation that would actually help. The only things that were truly bipartisan was bank deregulation and tax cuts. So, and those are the only things that Donald Trump has actually done, and he's creating more problems into the future. $1.5 trillion in tax cuts. Now there's a budget deficit, and Republicans will use that and are already using that in their narrative to go and say, well, look, we've got gigantic deficits. Now we're going to have to cut spending on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Well, we already have a plan drawn up for that. So, yeah, cut away. And too many Democrats are going to, of course, unfortunately, fall into that trap. But anyway, now, I want to give you a quote here from the Pew survey. It said that majorities of registered voters who support Democratic candidates for Congress rate 13 out of issues as very big problems facing the country. Among voters who favor the Republican candidates in the district, majorities rate only 5 issues as big problems. More striking, several of the issues that rank among the most serious problems among Democratic voters, including how minorities are treated by the criminal justice system, climate change, the rich-poor gap, gun violence, and racism, are viewed as very big problems by fewer than a third of Republican voters. And that really shows you, I think, that unless it affects them, it's not a problem. And we talked about this before. Hey, man, if I'm not personally impacted by this, then I don't think it's a problem at all. Racism? I'm white. I'll never experience racism. Who cares? Not a big problem. I'm not poor. Again, a lot of people who voted for Trump made over $70,000 a year in average income. More poor people actually voted in favor of Hillary Clinton during the election. So, I mean, rich people overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump because Donald Trump is a rich person who wants to make himself richer, and in doing so makes other rich people also richer through giant tax cuts for the rich. That's what it's all about. So they're not going to be affected by this. They're not affected by racism. And gun violence, hey man, look, they've got gated communities. They've got, schools with bodyguards, things like that. Yes, the gun problem is so rampant. I don't want to say that they'll never get affected. I think someday they will be. But even so, and I can go back to the shooting of Steve Scalise, how these Republican politicians were personally impacted by having a colleague that was shot right in front of them during a congressional baseball game, and they still didn't care. They're like, I guess we should have had more guns. So, yes, if it doesn't affect them, then it's not a problem. And these polls continue to show that over and over again. So the whole point here that I want to get to is say, hey, man, look, stop reaching out to Republicans. They don't care about the same things. They don't care about the same issues. They don't give a shit. They don't have the same priorities. They don't have the same worldview. Stop reaching out to them. Start reaching out to the majority of people who do share our values and who do see this as issues. People who are living in poverty, progressive activists, right? People, you know, who are being affected by the gigantic disparity in wealth, whose wages have not been risen since 1980. We've got to reach out to the majority of people, independents and progressives, and not to Republicans who have shown time and time again they're willing to sell the rest of us out for a little bit more profit, for something that benefits them. Okay. Moving on. All right. If you're one of the millions of Americans that like beer, such as maybe if you're a newly minted Supreme Court justice, well, your beer might be, well, in trouble. More to say that you might not have beer if climate change continues. This is a study here from the University of East Anglia, Norwich, United Kingdom, that found that if climate change continues, there will be a beer shortage. Now, let me get into the specifics here. Apparently, according to an article on CNN who covered this, global warming will lead to a substantial decrease in barley crop yields, causing beer shortages and a sharp rise in the price of the beverage. Now, this study was actually published Monday in the journal Nature Plants, which would make sense. Dabo Guan, who's a co-author of the study, said, hey, look, don't worry so much about the beer itself, but really you should worry about how climate change is going to affect your daily life. Now, if you like to, you know, after a hard day's work, come home and relax with a beer, well, then you should worry about climate change. In fact, he said, quote, if you don't want that to happen, if you still want a few pints of beer, then the only one way to do it is to mitigate climate change. We all have to work together to mitigate climate change. Now, in the study, basically, him and his friends were sitting around drinking some beer, and they thought, you know, it would be great. We come up with a study to see how climate change affects beer. So they went and they got all the available data, you know, crop yields and temperature changes, etc., where, you know, the most hot barley is grown. And what they came up with was not very good, not very encouraging. Now, an interesting phrase that they coined was called a luxury essential. So here's how they explain that. Quote, it refers to any item that's not a necessity and not for everyone, but for beer lovers, it is essential. And so they're basically classifying beer as a luxury essential. But I just thought that was fun. It's a luxury essential. Like if you like beer, if you like to sit down, you know, sit home and or go, you know, hang out with your friends, have a couple of beers after work, then that is a luxury essential. Now, under climate change, Guan said that the majority of countries will have a steep decline in barley. Now, of course, there will be differences among nations, of course, with the United States and Australia probably producing more barley, while China, Brazil, and Japan produce less. Now, you might think, wait a minute, so that means American beer growers will actually be helped out a lot. But wait a minute, not all barley is equal. So you have to kind of understand that. So the highest quality barley is used in brewing beer, whereas the lower quality ends up getting fed to pigs. In fact, only 17% of the barley that's grown today actually goes into making beer. The other 83% given to animals. So you want the good barley. Now, do we make good barley here in America? Not necessarily. Can we? I suppose. But that might actually take a lot of time to do, to set up. Now, they said that this is the case because quality barley crops are more sensitive to climate conditions than those of poor quality. Now, the increase seen in some countries, such as the U.S., will not necessarily benefit the beer industry, according to Guan. Additionally, U.S. producers will probably trade the barley to make money rather than making beer for themselves. Now, on average, and this is how bad it's going to be, global barley yields will decline between 3 and 17%, depending on the severity of the weather, according to the study. The team put this output into a social economic model that included beer production estimates in international trading forecasts. So, look, understand that's a big disparity, in between 3 and 17%. Now, again, that depends on the weather. Well, we just had a recent report that if we continue the status quo, in 12 years, we're going to have the most destructive climate change. So, odds are, it's going to be on the end of the spectrum, near that 17%, because right now we are not doing anything course set towards oblivion. And we have put a brick on the gas pedal. So, not going to be good. Now, according to the model, during the most severe climate events, global beer consumption would decline on average by 16%, while beer prices around the world would on average double. In less severe circumstances, global beer consumption would drop by just 4% on average, while prices still went up by about 15%. The United States in particular will see a 20% overall reduction in beer consumption under the worst case climate change scenario, while the per bottle price spikes by 50%. So now, there's good things, there's bad things, right? Good thing is maybe this will spur people into, you know, maybe giving a shit about climate change. I know there always has to be some sort of selfish motivation for us to actually do anything as a species that we should be doing. Universal health care. Maybe we should actually do something because I've got cancer. I don't really have cancer, guys. But that's an example, right? Boy, climate change is going to wipe out the beer supply. It's also going to wipe out chocolate. Oh, God, maybe I should do something because I like chocolate and beer, and sometimes I like the combination of, which I've never had before. I don't even know if that's a thing. But if it's not a thing, maybe it should be a thing. I don't know. Anyway. There's always that selfish motivation, right? But hey, look, maybe that selfish motivation might actually help people give a shit about the climate. Another good thing is that, look, if beer becomes twice as expensive, maybe cannabis will take off more. Cannabis is cheaper. It's not cheaper, but it depends. Cannabis is safer than alcohol. Trade-offs. And cannabis can grow pretty much anywhere. So it's not as picky of a plant as barley. So who knows? But those are the good things, of course. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do something about the climate. We should absolutely do something about the climate. Look, we are heading for disaster, seriously. And it's going to impact way, way more than, you know, how much you pay at the gas station for a 40. Okay, it's going to impact a lot of things. We actually have to do something about it. And it's going to take a massive investment and a massive shift away from fossil fuels, away from, you know, coal, oil, natural gas, and that stuff. And look, I'm in favor of a Marshall Plan, a massive rebuilding of our energy infrastructure. And not only that, but our vehicle infrastructure as well. You know, subsidizing new cars that are electric and new technologies that will help increase battery life. And, of course, look into new alternative ways of fueling those cars. So that's what we've got to do. So, look, if you're worried about anything, you should be worried about the future and survival of the of the human race, and not just your beer. Okay. All right. Let's do a couple more. Let's see. Trying to figure out what story I want to do next here. All right, let's go to Beto. Now, recently, Beto O'Rourke was challenged by a heckler who was a anti-abortion activist. Now, the way that he handled this is actually getting a lot of positive press. Now, Beto had visited San Antonio to meet with voters on Monday evening at Plaza Guadalupe. Now, there's an open-air art venue located in, of course, southern San Antonio. Now, he spoke about issues ranging from immigration to equal rights. And while he was talking about those different issues, somebody, a female heckler, began yelling at him and saying, "You approve of abortions." Now, look, for me, I think that is free speech, right? Yes, she is allowed to interrupt things to a point, and that's fine, right? Now, several members of the audience did attempt to silence her. However, Mr. O'Rourke decided that he was going to engage. So I actually think that this is the right thing to do. This is the right way to engage somebody who is apparently trying to heckle you. Now, what did he say? He said, quote, "I believe in a woman's choice," before going on to discuss the importance of access to women's health care. Now, the woman remained for a short time before leaving without being escorted by security. He said, this is actually on the NFL, so I'm going to leave that quote to later. But look, this is how you deal with it, right? Because look, you're going to be heckled. That is going to happen. How you respond to it really is what makes a story. Now, I don't think this is getting reported as much as, of course, when liberal activists challenge people who are in the Republican Party. Why? It's because people in the Republican Party, let's be honest, these Republican politicians, they love playing the victim. And right now they're pushing this liberal mob, right? So they're talking about how the liberal mob is coming in and they're forcing people to leave because they're yelling at him. In fact, Tucker Carlson recently said in a story that, man, people keep ruining my dinner. In fact, on a podcast for the National Review, he said, look, I cannot eat in certain places in D.C. because people keep insulting me. People keep yelling, "fuck you," at a restaurant. He says, quote, "I don't feel threatened, but having somebody scream "fuck you" at a restaurant, it just wrecks your meal." I'm not a restaurant guy anymore. It's sad. Well, for Tucker Carlson, stop being a dick, right? So the way that people like that handle it is they will get upset and then they will leave. Now, Beto O'Rourke, instead, he's like, okay, so let's talk about it. Let's engage. I actually believe in a woman's right to choose. And, I believe that we can have a civil conversation about this. And yes, we can protect a woman's right to choose, but, also make some reasonable limits. And I think that's his message. I don't necessarily agree 100% with that, but at least he's willing to have a conversation, right? Now, for some voters, that openness and willingness to have a conversation is actually very beneficial. Joanne Sylvia, a Texas voter who attended Mr. O'Rourke's speech, told The Independent, quote, I was really taken by the unity. And the fact that several times he said, you can be a Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever. Let's just work for the nation. Now, Christine Luna, a San Antonio native, said, he touched on so many points. This was very clear, especially with a woman yelling abortion in his face. I think it was very clear in his stance. He is not for abortion. He is for choice. It is not an oxymoron to be a Democrat and be pro-life. So let me just address that because I think that's important to bring up, right? So there is this caricature that has been painted on the right of people who are pro-choice that were like, oh no, if you get pregnant, just get an abortion. Like, it's so easy and it's even fun. So go and do it. Go ahead and use it as birth control. There are no liberals out there that say that, oh, you know what? That's a great idea. No, that's not the reality, right? So again, that's a picture that is painted to basically toy with people's emotions. That's how these conservatives work in their messaging, right? They say, look at these liberals. They support unfettered free abortion and use it as birth control. I don't know how many times I've heard that argument. And it's not true. In fact, the best way to prevent an abortion is to prevent the pregnancy in the first place, is to actually let people have contraception that is easily accessible, available, and in my mind, free. This is what progressives stand for. We stand for, hey, it's better to prevent a pregnancy than to have an abortion. But in the case where it's needed, abortion is an acceptable thing as long as it is safe and legal, right? That's what we want. Safe, legal abortions. Not abortion on demand, nothing like that. So this whole idea is like, oh my God, he's being so revolutionary and saying that you can be a Democrat and be pro-life. Let's get this straight. We are all pro-life. Everyone is pro. I'm alive. Of course I'm pro-life. But I am pro-choice as well. The thing is that I believe that people should have the choice. And if presented with all the evidence, all the facts, and preventative measures, people will make the right choice. If they are ready for children, then they are ready. If they are not, then there should be ways for them to be able to prevent that pregnancy. So that's the thing. That's what we believe in as progressives. Republicans, a lot of them don't believe in that. These anti-abortion activists, they don't believe that because they have fallen for the caricature or are paid to perpetuate the caricature of the abortion on a ban, murdering babies, whatever, liberal, which again is not true, is not true. So I don't know. It's just something like that kind of stuck out to me about this. But nonetheless, look, I think this is how you handle it. You handle it with, again, style. You say, okay, yeah, here's what I believe. I believe in a woman's choice. And that's it. That's it. Like, you want to scream that in my face? Go ahead. All day. But I believe in your choice. And that's it. And look, that's an example of actually being strong. I talk about how I've talked about before how you can't deal with the Republicans because they have such a big big difference in their worldview. But the way that you do it matters too. Then you've got Republicans talking about civility. To them, civility is nothing more than, hey, stop challenging me on my shitty ideas. No, you can challenge them and you can be strong. And that doesn't involve violence. It doesn't involve, have to involve cursing. It doesn't have to involve yelling. It just can involve saying, hey, man, look, this is what I believe. And, that's it. Like, I'm not changing my mind. I believe in choice. And here is why. And this is why I believe what I do. So, again, I think it was a great way to deal with this. I wish I had the video for you guys, but I don't. I couldn't find it. But if you do see that video, and you do see his response, that is the way that you should handle it, and I applaud Beto for it. Okay, we'll get to the net neutrality story tomorrow, because that's a big story as well. All right, I'm out of time. Thank you guys. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Also, thank you for the super chat. That helps the show. Helps us a lot, actually. So I appreciate that. Oh, I got a question here from Election Theft in 2016. I don't know if he's still watching, but what do you mean by election theft? So I don't know. I'll have to take that question on later at another time. But anyway, that's it. Thank you guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Same time, same place, around the nation.